वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की जय। अज्ञान तिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जन शलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। वन्दे बरसानानन्दा राधिकां परमेश्वरी गोपिकां परमां शुद्धां ह्लादिनीं शक्तिरूपिणी वन्दे नवघनश्यामं पीतकौशेय वाससं सानन्दं शुद्धं सुन्दरं श्रीकृष्णं प्रकृतेः परम्। नमः कमलनाभाय नमः कमलमालिने नमः कमलपादाय नमस्ते कमलेक्षण यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तग्वंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। Eternal seekers of truth, let's now chant for a few minutes the divine names of Shri Krishna. The words are Jai Jai Gopala Gopala Radha Vallabh Gopala. Let's sing the praises of Gopal, the divine cowherd, Shri Krishna, who is the beloved of Shri Radha. Please sing after me. Let's meditate as we sing. Jai Jai Gopala Gopala Radha Vallabh Gopala Jai Jai Gopala Gopala Radha Vallabh Gopala Jai Jai Gopala Gopala Radha Vallabh Gopala Gopala Radha लाल की जय। श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की जय। Devotional listeners, now I humbly request your full attention as I resume the talks on the essence of the Gita. The scripture is also known as Bhagavad Gita, and hardly anyone knows this, but it's also referred to by scholars as Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishad. And the scripture is the essence, it contains the essence of the teachings of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are part of the Vedas, the eternal Vedas, and Hinduism is all about the Vedas. The Vedas are the eternal voice of God. And Hinduism is also known, more appropriately known as Sanatan Vedic Dharma, the eternal religion of the Vedas. So Hinduism is an eternal religion, it's an eternal path, because the word of God is eternal, and the Vedas contain the Upanishads in them, and the Upanishads contain the most crucial knowledge that we all need. The knowledge of Brahma or God, the knowledge of Atma or the individual soul, and the knowledge of Maya, the deluding potency of God. So we have learned many valuable lessons from the Gita in this series of talks. Yesterday we learned from the Gita that no one can know God by self-effort. No one can know Him, because our senses, our mind, and our intellect, all these three are material. We can only know the world, and that too not in its entirety. There are so many things of this world that we don't know, we don't understand. So many things. So the scriptures say, गो गोचर जहाँ लगी मन जाई सो सब माया जाने हु भाई. Ramayan, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. The Vedas also say that the material mind can only go as far as the material world. God is beyond the reach of material mind and intellect. Our mind cannot know God. A philosopher by the name Leibniz said, God whom we could understand would be no God. Which makes so much sense. If our material mind could understand God, then it would mean that God is subservient to our mind. Our mind is superior to God because our mind has understood God. So he said, God whom we could understand would be no God. And we learn from the Gita the same thing, that we cannot know God through any means or methods. We can read all the scriptures of the world. We can go to all the holy places, we can make all the pilgrimages. We can undergo severe, austere penance, like subjecting our body to extreme heat or extreme cold. We can fast every day of the week, but we cannot know God. Sadhanau ghairana sangaira labhya suchiradapi. So how do we get to know God? The Bhagavad Gita says the only way you can know God is if He graces you. It is through His grace alone that you can know God. That you can know God, you can attain God realization. The only way to know Him is to receive His grace. So we've understood this and we talked about it yesterday. So now let's go further. How to attain the grace of God? Shri Krishna says to Arjuna, now you have understood that God can be attained only through His grace. Arjuna says, yes, my Lord, I have understood this. But do you know how you can attain His grace? No, I don't. Arjuna, to receive God's grace, you will have to surrender to Him. Surrender to Him and He will bestow His grace upon you. Surrender to Him. And by surrendering to Him, you will receive what you have always wanted. You'll go to His divine kingdom, you will receive unlimited bliss. You are not satisfied with the pleasures found in this world. You, meaning the soul, you have been desirous of unlimited happiness. You can't get that in the material world. You can get that only through God. And so to attain the grace of God, you need to surrender to Him. Tesham aham samuddharta mrityu sansara sagarat bhavami na chirat parth maya veshita chetasam ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate. At many places in the Bhagavad Gita, this concept has been explained, the concept of surrender. By surrendering to Him, you receive His grace. Every religion of the world tells us the same thing. Sharanagata, bhavinehita, vatsalatuhi, kriparas, sindhu namo. Jainism says, surrender to God to attain, in order to receive His grace. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. The Quran Sharif of the Islamic faith says, surrender to God to receive His grace. The Holy Bible says, God resisteth the proud, but giveth unto the humble. Submit therefore to God. Every religion says the same. So Shri Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyam. Arjun, they who are exclusively devoted to me meaning God, whom we know variously as Krishna, Bhagavan, Brahma, Paramatma, Ahur Mazd, Allah, Khuda. There are countless names of God. There are so many different ways of thinking about God, but when Shri Krishna says, they who are exclusively devoted to me, meaning they who are exclusively devoted to God, and they who submit themselves, they who surrender themselves exclusively unto me, to them I give my full protection. I protect what they have already in their possession, both materially as well as spiritually, and I give to them what they are lacking, both materially as well as spiritually. Now, there was a scholar who lived in India. His name was Jagannath Mishra. He was reading the Bhagavad Gita, and when he came upon this verse from chapter 9, verse 27, he thought, there's a mistake here somewhere. Lord Krishna is saying the Supreme Lord, He will come personally to help someone. I can't believe that. What I think is that He will arrange for someone to go help that devotee. But He will come personally? No, there is a mistake. So he actually used a red pen and he crossed out the word Vahamyaham and he replaced it with Dadamyaham. he actually made a so-called correction in the Bhagavad Gita. And Shri Krishna thought, what a fool he is. What a fool. He thinks that I have made a mistake. You see, no matter who has written the scripture, they're all divine saints who have written these scriptures. Let's say that Ramayana is written by Saint Tulsidas, but it is actually the Supreme Lord who was seated within the heart of Tulsidas who wrote the Ramayana. If we thought that the Ramayana was written by an ordinary man, then why would we have faith in it, in the words of the scripture? If we thought that the Bhagavad Gita was written by some human, why would we have faith in it? But the fact is, these scriptures are written, if they're written by a saint, then God who is seated within the saint, and God who does everything for that saint, the God-realized soul, he is actually writing the scripture. This is why Saint Kabir says, Jo kare so hari kare, hot Kabir Kabir. All the actions of Kabir are the actions of God. I'm not doing anything, he is the one doing everything for me. Now we can't claim that whatever I'm doing, God is actually doing. God is the doer. Why? Because we have not given that permission to God. You please take over. I will not do anything, you take over, and I submit to you. We haven't said that, we have not meant that, but the saints, the God-realized ones who have surrendered to God completely, whatever they do is the work of God. So Shri Krishna thought, he has found fault with my words. Anyhow, so this man, Jagannath Mishra, he was a great scholar, and he was very poor. He and his wife lived in abject poverty. They were living hand to mouth. So one day early in the morning, the scholar went off to the holy Ganga to take a dip in the early morning. He always did that. But his wife was worried there's nothing to eat at home. Not a single grain of rice, not a single kernel of wheat. There are no pulses, no grams, nothing to eat at home. What are we going to do today? If I boil water, what do I put in it? She was worried about this. And he had gone off, and she thought maybe he will ask for alms from the villagers, he'll bring back something. But when she was thinking about all this, there was a knock at the door. She opened the door, and there stood a little boy, no more than 10, 11, 12 years of age. But he was carrying a heavy load on his head. It was a big sack, and it seemed to be very heavy. So he asked for help, and she helped him get that sack down. And then she asked him, who are you, and what have you brought? He said, Mother, I am a student of your husband. Jagannath Mishra, the great scholar, is my guru, my teacher, my master. And what have you brought with you? He has, I don't know what he has given, but he has given me all this to bring to you. Then the scholar's wife noticed that the boy's face was all bruised. There were so many bruises on his face. And she asked him, who did this to you? He said, your husband. She said, excuse me, did you say my husband did this? Yes. Pandit Jagannath Mishra did this to me. And the scholar's wife started thinking, what has come over him? He is so non-violent. Why did he beat this boy so badly? And in the meantime, the boy left, and she was lost in her thoughts. When she opened the sack, she found vegetables, she found grains, various grains, she found rice, enough food stuff to last them for at least 1 week, and more. But then she was still angry with her husband. How could he beat up on this boy? So when he came home, she was ready for him. And immediately, she didn't say anything else, but she said, why did you beat up on that little boy? And he thought, what is she talking about? He never beat up on anyone. He said, I don't beat up on anyone. Who are you talking about? That boy that you sent all this with. I didn't send any boy with anything. What are you talking about? And his wife is thinking he has lost his mind. And he's thinking about her, she has lost her marbles. What is she talking about? I didn't send any little boy, and where did this all come from? They were going back and forth, and then it dawned upon him. The scholar suddenly understood with the grace of God that it was Sri Krishna himself who had come in the form of a little boy. And he had provided them with food because they had nothing to eat. And then he thought about this and he said, oh, I thought there was a mistake in the Geeta. I thought that he would provide, the Supreme Lord provides through someone else, but he provides himself. What a fool I was to doubt his words. So the scholar started crying, begging for forgiveness. Shri Krishna says, I provide whatever the surrendered one is lacking, and I protect what he has in his possession already. This is called a very well-known concept from the Gita is Yoga Kshem Vahan Karna. That means to offer full protection, to give what he's lacking and to protect what he already has in his possession. Once the devotee is surrendered. We see the relationship between surrender and grace even in the world. A newborn child is completely dependent on its mother. The child has no way of communicating in words, so no matter what is going on with the child, when the child wants milk, the child cries. When the child needs a diaper change, the child cries. When the child wants to be picked up, the child cries. It's up to the mother to interpret the meaning of the cries of her child. The child is completely dependent on its mother. So what does the mother do? She gives her full grace to her child. She graces him fully. She does everything for the child. And she guesses that, oh, this is what my child is crying for. Does he want to be picked up? Yes, yes, yes. Or does he want to be fed? No, I already fed him. Now he wants to be picked up. And now he's crying. Now he is well fed, and his diaper is not dirty, and he wants to be picked up, but he's still crying. Oh, he needs to be burped. So the child says, it's up to the mother. I'm just going to surrender and she will do everything for me. But when the child grows up, the child starts doing some things on her own. So the mother stops doing those things for the child, doesn't she? The little girl is able to tie her own shoelaces, so the mother doesn't do that. When the child grows older, she's able to make her own bed, so the mother doesn't do that. The child is able to bathe on her own, so the mother doesn't do that. There comes a time when that child, well, no longer a child, when she's able to do everything by herself, so she doesn't rely on the mother, and the mother just leaves her child to do everything for herself. So we see even in the world that when we surrender, we receive the grace. When the armed forces of a country know that they're going to be defeated, they put up the white flag, they put up their hands, they throw down the weapons. They're saying to the army, don't shoot at us, we're at your mercy. So when there is surrender, then mercy is given, grace is given. We see this even in the world. In the Hindu history, there was a devotee named Draupadi. And she was facing a great predicament. The Kauravas, Duryodhan and Dushasan and the others, the 100 brothers, they were very angry with the Pandavas, so they were going to humiliate Draupadi. And they had defeated the Pandav brothers in a game of chess, and Draupadi had been put on stake. So Draupadi was now being dragged into a full court full of kings and elders. It was a full court, and Dushasan was trying to disrobe her. He was trying to pull her sari, and she was going to be disrobed, and she panicked. And she first of all thought, oh, Yudhishthira will not let this happen. She looked upon him, but he hung his head down in shame, for he could not give his protection. He had played this gamble and he had lost, so he could not protect her. She looked then towards the elders. Surely Kripacharya, Dronacharya, Bhishma, Pitama, they would not allow this to happen. But they also disappointed her. They also hung their heads down in shame. And then she thought, I'll protect myself. And she put the edge of her sari between her teeth, but Dushasan was so strong. He just gave one little tug and the sari was out of Draupadi's mouth. And then she finally said, Ha Nath Dwarika Vasin. She called out to Shri Krishna, O Lord of Dwarika, come and protect my honor. When she surrendered fully, when she regarded him as her one and only, then Shri Krishna said, I'll do that. Immediately he made the sari extend endlessly. Dushasan kept on pulling and the sari kept on extending. And he finally gave up out of sheer exhaustion. This example of Draupadi shows us also that when the devotee relies solely on God, as the Geeta says, Ananya, meaning no other. I trust only God. I've put my faith only in God. Ek bharoso, ek bal, ek as vishwas, as the Ramayana says. I put my faith in only one and no other. When that ananyata, exclusiveness, comes into the heart, then God says, all right then, you will have my grace. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we learn that to receive God's grace, we must surrender to Him. But what is the meaning of surrender? How do we surrender? There is a confusion about this. Because a lot of people think that surrendering to God means just speaking fancy words in Sanskrit, Latin, or some other ancient language. That I'm speaking these words to you. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. I'm speaking Sanskrit. Oh Shri Krishna, you are my only refuge. You are my only shelter. So I surrender to you. But these are just words. These are just words, and words do not please God. The kingdom of God is not in words, says the Bible. God is not pleased with words. There was once a scholar who went into a mandir, a temple, and there was also an illiterate man, and they were standing side by side. The scholar of Sanskrit, he knew Sanskrit really well. He heard the illiterate man speaking Sanskrit wrongly. So the illiterate man was saying, he had heard these words in Sanskrit. He didn't know any Sanskrit. So he was saying, Krishnaya Namaha, which is correct. I bow down to Krishna. Ramaya Namaha, I bow down to Ram. And then he said, Vishnaya Namaha, I bow down to Vishnu. But it's not Vishnaya Namaha, it should be Vishnave Namaha. He wasn't conjugating it properly. And when the scholar heard this, he thought, oh, why do these people insist on speaking Sanskrit when they don't know it? So he immediately took it upon himself to correct this man. You foolish man, it's not Vishnaya Namaha, it's Vishnave Namaha. And the illiterate man said, sir, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. But now God is saying, it doesn't matter that he's mispronouncing Sanskrit or he's speaking it wrongly. But you see, he has tears in his eyes. He's regarding the murti or the idol not as something made of stone. He sees me there and he's talking to me. But you, scholar, on the other hand, you're speaking perfect. You're praying to me in Sanskrit, but there is pride in your voice. Vishnave Namaha. Pride. Oh, Vishnu, I bow down to you. There's pride and arrogance. The pride that comes from knowing Sanskrit, being a scholar. You can't shed that arrogance. You're not able to shed that pride that I know Sanskrit. I have read the Geeta. I have memorized so many chapters of the Geeta. I can analyze verses of the Geeta. You have this pride. That doesn't please me. God has an aversion to pride, and he has great love for the opposite of pride, which is humility, humbleness. The quality of being humble pleases God to no end. And where he sees pride, he leaves from that place. He leaves that heart which has pride in it. So words, speaking fancy words and saying, I surrender to you, that's not what surrender is. Verbal surrender is not true surrender, nor is ceremonial surrender. There are ceremonies in different religions. In Hinduism, we have many rituals and ceremonies, but they are meant for a very important purpose, and that is when you perform this ceremony, perform it for the love of God. Perform it so that he may be pleased. Do it for his pleasure. But what we started doing is we started just concentrating on, now I have to do this with my right hand. Now I have to speak this mantra. Now the sacred fire is built. Now I have to throw these ingredients, and the pandit, the priest will say swaha. Well, the priest will say this and this. Then I have to, on cue, I must throw the ingredients into the fire and I must say swaha. And we are so concentrated on saying swaha and throwing those ingredients that we are not able to think that this must be done for the pleasure of God. Why am I doing this? Is this just something physical? I'm just throwing these ingredients in the fire, and all we are concentrating on is just that. Ceremonies don't please God. Words don't please God. There was a man, and he used to drink every evening. One day I was, I think, giving you this example, and about a man who was drinking every evening when he came home from work, and it became a habit. And then he would feel very guilty because he knew that, this is considered to be one of the biggest sins in my religion. So he would say, Toba, 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 I beg your forgiveness. And then he would think, okay, God has forgiven me. The next morning, he would think, well, God has forgiven me for that. That evening, he would drink again. Then he would say, Toba, 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 forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. And every day, the same thing happened. So Sham ko, in the evening, khoob si pi, he was drinking. And Subah ko, in the morning, Toba kar li, he would ask for forgiveness. And so he was thinking, well, I have the best of both worlds. I don't have to give up my drinking, and the doors of heaven would be open for me. They would not be closed for me. Sham ko khoob si pi, subah ko toba kar li. To rind ke rind rahe aur haath se jannat na gayi. So verbal surrender, ceremonial surrender, they will not do. What we must surrender is what Shri Krishna is telling us to surrender in the Gita. He says, Mayeva mana adhatsva, may buddhim niveshaya. O Arjun, give me your mind and your intellect. Man and buddhi. If we give him just our mind and our heart, I love him, but we haven't given him our intellect, buddhi, then we don't have that knowledge. Why I should be loving him? Then the knowledge is not there. Why I should love him? I don't know, I just love him. Somebody will come along and say, well, he's not God, he's just a trickster, he's a great magician. And because there's no knowledge, then we would think, oh, perhaps he is that. So both the mind as well as the intellect must be surrendered to him. Shri Krishna says, give me your mind and give me your intellect. Mayeva mana adhatsva may buddhim niveshaya. And that is the way to surrender to him. We must surrender our mind. You see, the mind is the performer of all our actions. All our actions are done by the mind. We think that it's our eyes that see, but if we are looking at someone, the person is right in front of us, but we are not able to see him. Why? Because our mind is somewhere else. If that person complains later on, I was right in front of you, you didn't even acknowledge me. I was saying namaste to you, you didn't say namaste back to me. I was saying, hi, how are you doing? And you didn't give me any answer. And then we'd say, I didn't see you. I didn't see you. Were you there? Because our mind was somewhere else. We think that our ears are the ones that hear, but if our mind is absent, we say, I was absent-minded. Our ears cannot hear anything. If our mind is grieving and somebody puts a delicacy on our tongue, jabardasti, by force, we would not be able to taste the delicacy because the mind is somewhere else. The tongue cannot taste the delicacy. If we observe this carefully, we'll find that mind is the performer of all our actions. This is why many of our scriptures have this one verse contained in them, and that is Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoh. Mind alone is the reason behind bondage to this material world, and mind alone is the reason behind liberation from it. Mind alone. Anyone on the path of devotion, the path of spirituality, knows that what they are doing really is trying to control the mind, because the mind is the worker, the only worker that we have. And to surrender means to do nothing. The child is surrendered to the mother, the child does nothing. The armed forces of a nation, they surrender, now they will not fight, they will not use their weapons, they will do nothing. They put down their weapons. To surrender means to do nothing. So for us to surrender to God, it means to do nothing. You mean physically do nothing, just sit there? No, sitting is an action too. To surrender means to do nothing. That means the mind is given to God. My Lord, I will obey your will. I will do as you say. Shri Krishna says, "O Arjun, surrender to me. I'm telling you to fight this lawful battle." Arjun says, "I am fully surrendered to you." Then Shri Krishna says, "Then why are you casting doubts on my words? Why are you then saying, if I kill these people, I'll be murdering them and I will be incurring a sin, and then these men, their wives will become widows and they might become characterless. They might have children out of wedlock. And if there are all these illegitimate children in a society, that society will be brought to ruins and I cannot be responsible for that." Shri Krishna says, hold on. You're not to think on this. I am telling you what to do. Just do it. Fight the battle. There is a great example in our Hindu history about a dacoit and a murderer. His name was Ratnakar. He used to capture people passing through the forest, jungle, and he would murder them and he would rob them of their wealth. And one day, Narad Muni, the great sage, came his way, and Ratnakar captured him too. Narad Muni said, "I have nothing that you could ever want, but as I would like to ask you, why are you committing these murders? Because that's the only way I know how to support myself and my elderly parents and my wife and my children." Narad Muni said, "But don't you know you're incurring great sins, that you'll be punished? Every action has a reaction, so you'll be punished for your sinful acts." And he said, "Well, my family will help me pay for these sins." And Narad Muni said, "Why don't you go and ask them? Will they? And Ratnakar said, you're a clever one. You're sending me off to ask my family and you'll run away. Naradji said, you can tie me to a tree. So Ratnakar tied Narad Muni to a tree, went home, asked his family members, and got a flat no from all of them. His mother said, Beta, my son, I love you more than life, but I have never killed even a single fly in my life. If a mosquito comes, I just shoo it away. I don't ever kill even a mosquito. So you are doing the killings, you will pay for your actions. The father said the same. Ratnakar asked his wife, and he had great hopes, and she said, dear husband, it is your duty to provide for us. Now, I didn't tell you to kill anyone, so you're on your own. What could he expect from his children? So he went back to Narad Muni, greatly disappointed, and he said, Maharaj, tell me how to repent for my sins. Narad Muni said, take the name of God. Utter the holy name of Ram. Ram, God who lives in the heart. Just say Ram, 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 Ram. And Ratnakar tried. He couldn't even say Ram. 2 syllables. Rama, Ram. Couldn't say the name. God would not allow the sinner to utter the holy name. So Naradji thought, all right, can you say Mara? Ram inversely. He said, yeah, I can say Mara. Yes, Mara, Mara. Mara means he's dead. So he used to kill people, and then he would dump the dead body in a ditch, and he would say, oh, Mara, and he's dead. I can say Mara. Now, he didn't have a speech impediment that he couldn't say Ma or Ra. He could say Mara, he couldn't say Ram. Naradji said, go ahead and say Mara, 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 until I come back. And that's all that the Guru said. And Ratnakar, this murderer, this sinner of great proportions, he surrendered to his Guru. He trusted him, and he said, all right, I will do that. And he just kept saying, Mara, Mara, Mara. And he said this, and he didn't even ask Narad Muni, Guruji, how long should I keep on saying Mara, Mara? And what's the point in saying Mara, Mara? I don't understand. And Guruji, would you allow me to take breaks? I will get hungry, I'll get thirsty. I need to tend to my body. I need to take naps. This man truly understood the meaning of surrender, and he didn't ask a single question. My Gurudev, Jagat Guru Shri Kripalu Ji Maharaj used to say that, if it were any one of you, you would have asked 100 questions. You would have had so many doubts, but this man had no doubts. He was fully surrendered. He said, Guru has said, say Mara, Mara, Mara until I come back, and he started doing that. Narad Muni did not come back for a long, long time. And this man kept on saying Mara, Mara, Mara. Termites infested his whole body. His his body became a dwelling place of termites. So many, many years later, Narad Muni came back. We're talking about Satyug, when people used to live for thousands of years. We're in Kali Yuga, when you'd be lucky if you hit 100. The 100 mark is hit by just very few people. But in Satyug, our Hindu scriptures divide time into 4 ages or yugas. Satyug, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and the current age, Yuga, era, Kali Yuga. So after many, many years, Narad Muni came back, and he saw that the surrender of his disciple, and he saw that the termites had infested his body, but his breath was still continuing. He was breathing. He bestowed God realization upon Ratnakar and gave him the name Valmiki, Sage Valmiki. He became Sage Valmiki. In the same lifetime, he went from being such a sinner to a saint. Valmiki means house of termites. So we say, Ulta naam japa jag jana, Valmiki bhai brahm samana. By taking the name of God inversely, instead of saying Ram, he said Mara. He attained God realization. But is that how he attained God realization? No. He attained God because he received the grace of his Guru, because he was surrendered to his Guru. Whether we're talking about God or a godly saint who has all the powers of God, the true meaning of a Guru is one who has attained God realization. He may look like an ordinary person, he looks like the rest of us, but there's nothing ordinary about him on the inside. He has complete knowledge of all scriptures, and that is because he has attained God. God has gifted him all of God's powers, godly powers. So Narad Muni, the Guru, gives to Ratnakar Daku God realization because Ratnakar surrenders fully to Sage Narad. Shri Krishna says, when you surrender to me completely, have no doubts about me. He says to Arjun, do not ask any questions. You say you're surrendered to me, but you're still thinking about your this duty and that duty. Why should I do this? And how can I do this? And I'll be incurring sins. Don't you know, Arjun, that I will absolve you of all sins? Aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami ma shuchaha. In the 18th and final chapter, Shri Krishna says, I shall absolve you of all sins. Ma shuchaha, do not worry, O Arjun. Just surrender yourself. When we talk about surrender and the true meaning of surrender, we must understand that surrender means, what do we have to surrender? The mind. The mind has to be surrendered to God. No matter how many fancy words we may speak in front of God, they make no impression on God. No matter how many ceremonies we perform, they make no impression on God. There is a Roman Catholic story that I'd like to share with you. There was an acrobat. He was a street performer, and he went into a church, and there he saw people lighting candles before the image of Mother Mary. And he saw that they were asking the mother for one favor or the other. And he was very innocent, and he thought, the mother must give them what they want, and that's why they're asking her. So he thought, I will also ask her for something. And he lit a candle also. And in his heart he thought, Mother, I'm not greedy. I just need food to eat every day, and I need clothes on my back. That's all I want. But then he thought, well, when I perform for people, they become happy, then they throw coins in my hat. So I will do something for the mother, then she'll be pleased with me and she'll give me what I want. So he thought, I will give her the performance of my life, but I will do it in private. It's a private performance. So he waited for everybody to leave the church, the priests and the congregation, everybody left, and then they closed the doors from the outside, and he closed the doors from the inside. And then he removed the furniture, and then he started giving the performance of his life for the Divine Mother. And he was jumping up and down, he was covered with sweat, and then sometime later, someone outside heard, and he told the others, there seemed to be some noises coming from inside. They opened the doors, but he had locked from inside, and so they pounded on the door. He couldn't hear them. He was so concentrating on his performance. So they broke the doors down. There they saw this man. Sometimes he was up in the air, then he was down. He was giving a wonderful performance, but they became so angry with him that they started to beat him. And then there was a voice heard in the church, and that was, do not beat this pure devotee of mine. All of you think of me to be a statue made of stone, but he regards me as his mother. He regards me as being real. He doesn't look at me as a piece of stone. And when the priests and the congregation, when they heard this voice, they all fainted. And because this man was so surrendered to God, he had full faith, he became God realized. In every religion, there are such stories of having simple faith in God, surrendering the mind to God, and thereby receiving the grace of God. And our scriptures say, the Vedic scriptures of the Vedas, based on the knowledge of the Vedas, they say that before you can surrender to God, you need to surrender to a representative of God on earth, known as a guru. The word guru means gum rauti iti guruhu. Gum rauti iti guruhu. Girati ajnanam iti guruhu. Grinati jnanam iti guruhu. The one who dispels ignorance is the guru. The one who gives knowledge of God is the guru. This is why it is our tradition that we bow first to the guru, then we bow to God. Because guru is the one who takes us to God. The guru is the one who teaches the disciple about God. And even God has said in the scriptures, I am not so pleased with those who are directly devoted to me. I am pleased with the ones who are devoted to my pure devotees. In other words, a guru. So Shri Krishna says this also in the Gita. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. O Arjun, the seeker must surrender fully to a guru, ask him questions to eradicate all doubts, and he must serve the guru. So we cannot surrender directly to God because we are not at the stage where we can see God, serve him directly, and listen to his instructions. But God says, never mind, I'm sending my pure representative to earth. Surrender to him, and by surrendering to him, you'll be surrendering to me. By serving him, you'll be serving me. You'll get the same benefit as you would get by serving me directly. So this is a powerful message that we get from the Bhagavad Gita. In these 2 days, I have talked to you about grace and surrender and the relationship between both of them. We cannot know God without his grace, and we cannot attain his grace without surrendering to him. Still, the question remains, how do I surrender at a practical level? What does that mean? What do I do on a daily basis through which I may surrender to God? Because this is just a concept, okay, I surrender to God. How do I surrender to the Guru and thereby surrender to God? What does it mean at a practical level? I will take up this question tomorrow and in the final talk of the series, day after tomorrow. बोलिए वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय, श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की जय. जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे.